Let us pray. Loving eternal God, you indeed have given us so much, and you continue to teach us each and every day. And so we ask that you open our hearts, open our minds. May we listen to your message. Through your humble servant we pray. Amen. Have you ever wanted to take back? In other words, have you ever said something, or tweeted something, or emailed, or texted, or posted something on Facebook or Instagram that you wish you had never done? I think sometimes we mean well, but sometimes something comes out of our mouth, we say something that we wish we could take back. Because sometimes we may say or do something that we realize has some unfortunate consequences with others. And so it's important that we understand where we're coming from, especially Jeremiah, and you heard a little bit from the gospel where Jesus was young, and yet Jesus was saying these words and they were all amazed. But we have Jeremiah who's like, he's being called by God, and he's young, and he's like, no, there's something I could do that would be wrong. I could say something wrong. I don't feel comfortable doing this. And especially in a very tumultuous time. But God said, no, don't say that you're only a boy, because I am going to put my word on your lips. You are going to be my mouthpiece for all of Judah. You are going to help my people and give them hope. Well, Jeremiah obeyed, but if you know anything about the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah did not live in a very great time. This is roughly 2,600 years ago or more. And Jeremiah was living in a time, and he was called as a prophet. He would talk to the kings, and some of the kings would listen to him, some of them wouldn't. But Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon were all trying to take control over the kingdom of Judah. And they were all kind of like trying to battle these. If the kings listened, then they had a little bit of peace, and they could stay where they were. But if the kings didn't listen, lo and behold, Babylon came and took over, conquered Judah, and all these people were brought to Babylon. So now they are not living where they are used to worshiping their God. They're living in a very secular society. They're living in a time where they had only known how to worship their God and make pilgrimages to Jerusalem. And now they're living up in Babylon, and they can't do that anymore. How do they stay true to their faith when everyone around them doesn't worship their God? When everyone around them has false gods and are interested in other things? Does that sound familiar at all in our society today? Do we have a lot of people that don't believe in any kind of faith whatsoever, or they have their own personal faith and don't share that with anybody else, or they don't see the need for church, they don't have the need for God? Do we see any of that today in our society? Do we have people that are consumed with all the good goodies that we have? That's why I wanted to talk about Jeremiah and relate Jeremiah to also our time today, because we're in that kind of area in our lives. Not necessarily the same thing, we're not under oppression the same way they were when they were in exile in Babylon, but these people were isolated. And we know that there's so many people today that don't see any need for God or faith. It's like, what's the point? And so they sometimes look at us, Christians, or people of faith, with disdain. It's like, why do you do that? Why do you go to church? Why do you need this? And yet, if we could have them see and experience it, then maybe they would understand. So this is where we are today. We are in a place where We have been exposed to a very secular society where we have people that have no faith or have lost their faith. And we have people that are faithful and they're trying to stay true to their faith, but they aren't surrounded necessarily by the great cloud of witnesses that we always talk about. So, how do we speak for God? How do we speak for God in a time such as this? Well, what would it mean to you if God asked you to be the mouthpiece, like Jeremiah, to speak and witness for God? Would you be willing to be God's mouthpiece? Would you be willing to go out there and share the good news? Beyond our doors. Not just here where it's safe, but beyond our doors. Would you be willing to do that? And would you allow God as the ultimate potter to shape you into the person that God created you to be? Even if in this world that we live in now, this unstable, misshaped world that we live in now, or do you want to still take control of your life and be in control of all your plans, even if God has other plans for you? Are you and will you allow God to maybe reshape you a little bit, soften your heart, and realize that God has even more for you than you can ever realize? So we use pottery as an image, which was so readily available in Jeremiah's day and throughout the world. And if you know some of the scriptures in the New Testament, they say we have this treasure in earthen vessels, or treasure in clay jars, jars of clay. That means us, made out of the dust, right? Out of the clay. And it's the treasure that's inside of us that can be used for good. So Jeremiah was using the same kind of words that could make sense to the people that he was serving. And he was basically a container of truth. He told the truth to the kings. He told them what it was going to be like if they didn't listen to God. And those who did listen to God, it was tough, but God was there. But those that didn't, it was really tough for the people because they essentially abandoned what God was asking them to do. And so Jeremiah, throughout his life, he tried to connect people with God once again, over and over and over again. And he got frustrated. He cried. The other book in the Old Testament is called Lamentations, was also written by Jeremiah. The idea where he lamented over his people, over what he had to endure. And there was times when he lost his family, he lost his house, he was in prison. All these things happened to Jeremiah. So it wasn't easy being a prophet. And I tell you, when I first used to read some of these stories in the Old Testament and heard what the prophets had to go through, I'm like, there is no way I ever want to have to do anything like that in my life because I don't want to ever be exposed to any of that. But I think it's important that we understand that even though they went through such tumultuous times, Jeremiah still tried to bring hope. And towards the end of the book of Jeremiah, which we'll hear about in the future, he does something that makes no sense whatsoever. But he did it because God asked him to do it. And the idea was he wanted to tell people that there is hope for the future. And he wanted them to know that they weren't going to be exiled forever, that there would be a time when they would be able to come back home. So we just have to go through this story. We can't know it all today. You have to hear what Jeremiah goes through and how he works with his people to help them realize that there is a hope and there is a future for all of them. They just have to open up their hearts and allow God to shape them once again. There is a book written by Melissa Spolstra, and she entitled it Dare to Hope. And her whole book is basically tying Jeremiah with what she's going through today. So she draws all these parallels. But this is what she says. She says, when we look around at today's world, hope usually isn't the first word that comes to mind. In many ways, we live in an age of uncertainty. If we allow our thoughts to linger on things such as the national debt, the conditions of the environment, all the horrific tornadoes, hurricanes, and fires that destroy people's homes and livelihood, the increase in violence toward even our most innocent, and the looming moral bankruptcy of our culture, we can get pretty discouraged. And all you have to do is turn the news on any given day, and we see some of that. And she also says then the situation only compounds when we add our personal issues to all these corporate ones. She said life can be rough when we are experiencing any disappointment, challenge, adversity, or things that affect us either personally or corporately. It can give us a propensity to worry, to have fear, to doubt, and to also sometimes experience bitterness when life overwhelms us. Do we ever get those feelings of worry or fear? Do we ever get angry or bitter about something when something doesn't go our way, or when we get so frustrated? Aren't there times when we experience some of those emotions? But she said God offers us another choice. Through God, she says, we can dare to hope, because God calls us to surrender our wills and rest our hope in God alone. God is asking us to let go. In other words, to let go of the power and control the things that we like to hold on to, and to let God be our navigator and steer our course. And you think about it, how many of us, especially now that fall has begun and the schools have started up, how many of us go at breakneck speed right now, breakneck pace, and we forget to take notice of all the life around us? We get busy with our calendars. How many of you have a calendar on your phone? How many have little planners that you keep filling out, right? We get so busy with our calendars, we have time for work, for our family ministry, we juggle our kids and grandkids' schedules, you have to clean the house, you have to do laundry, you have to take care of other chores and errands, buy groceries, you got to make dinner, or some other meals for the family. And you know what? And that's just one day. And then the next day begins, and you start all over again, right? So we have all these things that keep us so busy all the time. And so she asks whether we need a wake-up call or not. Can we put our hope and trust in everything else but God? Is that what we do? Do we put our trust and hope in everything else but God because we get so busy with everything that we're doing? And she also says it's easier to put our trust in ourselves and all that we own than it is in God. For most people. Some people, they're really good. They put all their trust in God. But a lot of us, it's like, yeah, we have our own GPS, we got everything planned out, this is what we're going to do. And we try and do it all ourselves. So Jeremiah is one who not only lived in a time when God's message wasn't popular, because those people of Judah couldn't see the plans that God had for them. And especially when we can't see what God is doing for us, that's when we don't necessarily trust as much. Because if we can't see it, how do we believe and put our trust in it, right? Remember, we always say seeing is believing, but the truth is believing is seeing, right? So God is calling us now to open up our eyes, to open up our ears, our hearts, and to always receive God's message of hope. In the midst of all the throes of life that we go through each and every day, even when we have curveballs thrown at us, or fastballs, or slow pitches, or whatever it may be, or those sinkers, right? Isn't that another one of sinkers? Things that all of a sudden just throw us off course. And we know that it's so easy for us to be swept into a world of despair. And if we know it, don't you think God knows it also? So how do we embrace the story of Jeremiah? And how do we embrace God in our lives? Because, Jeremiah dared to hope. He dared to hope even when everything was wrong, when everything was lost in his life, and when he was unjustly accused, and when he was lowered in these cisterns and held captive. He still dared to hope. He still believed that there was a future. He kept his heart from hardening, and he stayed hopeful amid all of it, and he allowed God to continue to shape and mold him. So I ask us to dare to hope, to no matter what we may face, and be able to say with Jeremiah this. From Lamentations, Jeremiah said these words, "Yet I still dare to hope when I remember this. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. God's mercies never cease. Great is God's faithfulness. God's mercies begin afresh every morning." May it be so.